Just when everyone thought Xiao Yan was too frightened to show himself, a voice suddenly resounded through the air. Release them within 10 breaths. Otherwise, the Xuanling Hall will be destroyed. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, please consider supporting us through the donation. It really motivates us to keep creating. Picking up from the previous chapter, high above the vast skies of the relic continent, Xiao Yan hovered silently, his figure suspended amidst drifting clouds. The wind swept past his robes, causing them to ripple softly, yet his expression remained grave and focused. A faint killing intent lingered in his eyes like embers quietly burning beneath calm ashes. Behind him, the ancestor of the heavenly python watched Xiao Yan for a moment before finally speaking in a deep, steady voice. Have you offended any factions on this relic continent? The question hung in the air. Xiao Yan remained silent for a brief moment, as if recalling the events that had just unfolded. Then he slowly nodded. Earlier, in order to save a child, I clashed with several Supreme Realm experts, he said calmly. His voice sounded steady, but beneath that calmness was an unmistakable trace of anger. I only forced them to retreat. I did not kill them. When Xiao Yan said those words, the fury hidden deep in his heart became slightly more evident. The reason he had spared those people was never because he feared them. It was simply because he believed that everyone deserved a chance to correct their mistakes. At that time, he thought that after being defeated, those experts would at least reflect on their actions and realize the cruelty of what they had done. But clearly, they had misunderstood his mercy. They believed that Xiao Yan had held back because he was afraid. A faint cold smile appeared on Xiao Yan's lips. Those people truly did not understand what it meant to provoke someone like him. Before Xiao Yan could say anything else, Kai Lin's calm voice sounded from the side. Go. Her purple eyes were clear and decisive. Leave the affairs of the Taishu ancient dragon tribe to us. Kai Lin knew Xiao Yan well. From the moment she sensed the anger in his aura, she understood that he would not let this matter rest so easily. Some people only learned their lesson after paying a painful price. Xiao Yan turned his head slightly and looked at Kai Lin. For a brief moment, the coldness in his eyes softened. The two of them exchanged a glance. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly. Xiao Yan nodded. I'll be back soon. The moment his voice fell, the space around him trembled slightly. Then, in the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared from the sky, as if he had merged into the void itself. Only the lingering fluctuation of space remained slowly fading away. Far away in the southern region of the relic continent lay a vast territory known as the Eight Kings Domain. This region was enormous, so large that it occupied nearly 1/10 of the entire southern continent. The reason it was called the Eight Kings Domain was simple. Within this massive land, 8 powerful factions ruled over different territories, each controlling vast cities, mountains, and countless cultivators. Every one of these factions possessed terrifying strength. Their leaders were all experts who had stepped into the Supreme Realm. Among them, alliances formed, rivalries simmered, and countless battles had shaped the history of this region. No ordinary force dared to provoke them. At the eastern edge of the Eight Kings Domain stretched a massive mountain system known as the Yuande mountain range. Towering peaks pierced the clouds like giant spears rising from the earth. Ancient forests covered the slopes, and powerful magical beasts roamed the deep valleys. Spiritual energy in this region was extremely dense, making it a treasured cultivation ground for many sects and clans. Yet on this day, the calm atmosphere of the Yuande mountain range was about to be shattered, because a certain man was coming. And when Xiao Yan moved, even the strongest factions of the Eight Kings Domain would soon realize that some people in this world were not meant to be provoked. Legend had it that the Yuande mountain range had not always been the thriving land people saw today. Thousands of years ago, this place was nothing more than a desolate and lifeless wasteland. The mountains were barren, the soil dry and cracked, and even the most resilient spiritual herbs struggled to survive. Few cultivators ever visited this region, as the spiritual energy here was thin and unstable, offering little value for cultivation. However, everything changed because of a single person. According to ancient records, an ascender from a lower plane, known as the Tianyuan plane, had once descended upon this very land. That expert possessed astonishing strength and was said to have reached an extraordinary level of cultivation. After arriving here, he performed a powerful technique known as spiritual power assimilation. During this process, the energy from his original plane merged with the spiritual energy of the Great Thousand World. But the energy from the Tianyuan plane was extremely unique, far purer and more vibrant than ordinary spiritual power. As the assimilation unfolded, the heavens and earth trembled. Spiritual energy surged violently, like an endless tide pouring into the land around him. Within a 1,000-mile radius centered on that expert, the entire environment underwent a miraculous transformation. The once barren land rapidly became fertile. Dry mountains turned lush. Rivers formed forests spread across the mountains, and countless rare herbs and spiritual plants began to grow. In just a short period of time, what had once been a dead wasteland transformed into a thriving and vibrant forest region filled with abundant spiritual energy. It was almost as if life itself had been reborn. As for the mysterious expert from the Tianyuan plain, no one knew what became of him. Some legends claimed that he had long since left this place to explore deeper regions of the Great Thousand World. Others believed that he had perished during the assimilation process. There were even rumors suggesting that he had entered seclusion somewhere deep within the mountains. But regardless of the truth, one thing remained certain. The legacy he left behind continued to shape this land. The forests he created had grown larger and denser with every passing century, eventually forming the vast wilderness known today as the Yuande mountain range. Later, a powerful faction rose within this region. In order to commemorate the mysterious expert who had transformed the land, they named themselves the Yuande sect and established their headquarters deep within the mountain range. Over the centuries, the Yuande sect gradually became one of the notable forces within the Eight Kings domain, controlling a large territory and countless cultivators. The mountain range flourished under their rule, but today, everything had changed. The once vibrant Yuande mountain range was now filled with a thick and suffocating smell of blood. The air felt heavy. A faint crimson mist lingered between the trees, as if the forest itself had witnessed a brutal slaughter. At the center of the mountain range, the sky was constantly filled with sharp explosions as figures moved at incredible speeds. The sound of air being violently torn apart echoed again and again across the heavens. Thousands of powerful experts had gathered along the outer perimeter of the mountains. They stood on mountain peaks, floated in the sky, or gathered on distant cliffs, forming an enormous circle around the battlefield. Each of them possessed formidable strength. Some were leaders of powerful sects. Some were wandering cultivators. Others were elders from influential factions within the Eight Kings domain. They had all come here for the same reason. Today, something extremely important was about to happen. A confrontation that could shake the entire Eight Kings domain. As the crowd waited, whispers began spreading among the gathered experts. "Has that kid not arrived yet?" one person asked impatiently. His gaze swept across the sky, but there was still no sign of the man they were waiting for. Another expert shook his head and sneered. "I doubt that kid will come. If he had any sense, he would have already fled the Eight Kings domain." However, someone nearby immediately disagreed. "You're underestimating him. That man is not someone ordinary. The one called Xiao Yan is rumored to be a genuine Earth Supreme expert." The moment those words were spoken, the surrounding crowd grew noticeably quieter. Even in the vast Great Thousand World, an Earth Supreme was considered a terrifying existence. And today, that very person might soon arrive in the Yuande mountain range. When he did, the entire Eight Kings domain might witness a battle that would shake the heavens. He may even rival the Hall Master of Xuanling Hall. Someone in the crowd spoke in a low voice, his tone filled with both curiosity and caution. At the mention of Xuanling Hall, many people's expressions immediately changed. After all, that name carried enormous weight in the surrounding regions. Speaking of which, another cultivator said while narrowing his eyes toward the distant mountain peak, Xuanling Hall is the absolute overlord of the Xuanling Heaven domain. That territory alone is far larger than the entire Eight Kings domain. Yet now they've come all the way here, barged directly into our Eight Kings domain, severely injured one of the Eight Kings, and even imprisoned him. A trace of anger appeared in his voice. This is no small matter. Someone beside him frowned and asked quietly, "Has the Heavenly King Hall shown no reaction?" The Heavenly King Hall was widely acknowledged as the strongest faction within the Eight Kings domain. Their hallmaster Wang Tiangang possessed terrifying strength and had ruled the domain for many years. Rumor had it that he had already stepped into the level of an Earth Supreme. Another man shook his head slowly. "Not yet. So far, Wang Tiangang hasn't made any move." Hearing this, several people exchanged uneasy glances. The actions of the Xuanling Hall Master are clearly a provocation against the dignity of the entire Eight Kings domain. If the Heavenly King Hall stays silent, won't that make all of us look weak? Someone laughed bitterly. Who knows what Wang Tiangang is thinking? Maybe he doesn't want to provoke Xuanling Hall. After all, the strength of Xuanling Hall was terrifying. Even the Heavenly King Hall might hesitate before confronting them. Another cultivator sighed. At this rate, it looks like the Eight Kings domain may soon have to change its name to the Seven Kings domain. As soon as those words were spoken, several people nearby immediately fell silent, because everyone understood the meaning behind that statement. One of the Eight Kings had already been defeated, and now he was imprisoned like a criminal. If things continued this way, the power structure of the Eight Kings domain would inevitably collapse. Discussions and whispers continued endlessly along the outer edges of the mountain range. Thousands of experts had gathered here, yet none dared to approach too close. Every pair of eyes was focused on the center of the Yuande mountain range. There, a colossal mountain peak rose straight into the sky. The peak was over 10,000 zhang tall, piercing through the clouds like a giant pillar supporting the heavens. At the very summit of that mountain stood a massive hall. The hall itself was nearly 1,000 zhang wide, built from ancient dark stone that radiated an overwhelming aura of authority. Its towering pillars were engraved with mysterious runes, and powerful spiritual fluctuations continuously spread from within. This was the temporary stronghold of the Xuanling Hall experts. But the most shocking sight was located right in front of the giant hall. Floating in mid-air was a massive spatial prison nearly 100 zhang in size. The prison was formed entirely from condensed spiritual power and spatial seals. Countless runic chains flickered across its surface, locking the space inside so tightly that even Supreme Realm experts would struggle to break free. Inside that prison, thousands of people were trapped. Some were injured, some were covered in blood. Others simply sat in despair, their eyes filled with helplessness. These people were disciples and elders of the Yuande sect. Among the prisoners, a young girl stood trembling slightly. Her delicate figure looked fragile within the enormous prison. Her eyes were red, but she tried desperately to remain strong. This girl was Ye Rong. She was the same child whom Xiao Yan had previously rescued. Standing beside her was a middle-aged man who shielded her protectively with his body. His expression was grave, yet his posture remained unyielding. Even though they were imprisoned, he stood tall like an unbroken mountain. This man was Ye Jianshan, the sect master of the Yuande sect. And today, the fate of everyone within that prison might depend on whether one man would arrive in time. From the condition of his body, it was obvious that Ye Jianshan had already endured a brutal battle. His robes were torn and stained with dark patches of dried blood. Several deep wounds could still be seen on his arms and chest, and although he tried his best to stand upright, his complexion was extremely pale. Even his breathing had become slightly unsteady. Anyone with sharp perception could tell that his internal injuries were severe. Yet despite his condition, Ye Jianshan still stood firmly in front of Ye Rong, shielding her with his body like an unbreakable wall. As the sect master of the Yuande sect, even in defeat and imprisonment, he refused to show weakness before his enemies. Behind the enormous spatial prison, several figures sat calmly as if watching a spectacle. Three elderly men were seated on chairs formed entirely from condensed spatial power floating steadily in the air. Their posture was relaxed, yet the terrifying spiritual pressure radiating from them made the surrounding space feel heavy and suffocating. These three men were all elders of Xuanling Hall. Among them, the one sitting in the middle possessed the most powerful aura. His cultivation had reached the level of a ninth-grade supreme. This man was the great elder of Xuanling Hall. He was also the very person who had previously confronted Xiao Yan and been defeated by him. Although he had recovered somewhat since then, the humiliation of that defeat still burned deep in his heart. Beside him sat the second elder and third elder of Xuanling Hall. Both of them had already stepped into the 8th grade supreme realm, making them terrifying figures capable of suppressing entire sects. At this moment, the three elders stared coldly at the spatial prison in front of them. Their expressions were completely indifferent. To them, the lives inside that prison meant nothing. Ever since the Hallmaster of Xuanling Hall had made his announcement to the entire 8 Kings domain, 2.5 days had already passed, and now only half a day remained. The conditions of that announcement were extremely clear. If Xiao Yan did not appear within the final half-day, they would begin executing the prisoners. Every hour, 300 members of the Yuande sect would be slaughtered. The killings would continue without pause, until every single person inside the spatial prison was dead. It was a cruel and merciless declaration, but it had successfully drawn the attention of the entire 8 Kings domain. Suddenly, the space high above the mountain range twisted violently. Ripples spread through the sky like waves across water. Two figures slowly emerged from the distorted void. One was a young man dressed in flowing white robes, his posture elegant and calm. The other was an elder, wearing a brown robe, whose deep gaze suggested immense experience. The moment they appeared, many people among the watching crowd immediately recognized them. "They're people from the Spirit King Manor." A wave of murmurs spread through the gathered experts. The Spirit King Manor was an extremely powerful faction within the 8 Kings domain. Among the 8 ruling forces, they ranked third. The white-robed young man was one of their most talented disciples, while the elder beside him was a well-known protector of the manor. Their arrival clearly showed that even the top factions of the 8 Kings domain were paying close attention to this matter. But the commotion had only just begun. Moments later, another sharp sound of air being torn apart echoed across the sky. A powerful figure shot across the horizon like a streak of lightning. The person moved with astonishing speed before finally slowing down near the outer area of the mountain range. It was a young man with a long sword strapped across his back. His expression was cold and composed, and his entire body radiated a sharp aura, like an unsheathed blade ready to strike at any moment. Someone in the crowd immediately gasped in recognition. "That's Jiantao of the Sword King sect." The Sword King sect was another one of the 8 Kings factions, famous for their unparalleled mastery of sword techniques. Jiantao himself was considered one of the most outstanding young geniuses within the sect. It's said he's one of the future heirs of the Sword King sect. Many people quietly stepped aside, giving him space. After all, someone like Jiantao was not just a talented cultivator. He represented one of the most powerful forces within the entire 8 Kings domain. And yet, even more people continued arriving, because everyone knew that today's event would determine whether Xiao Yan would truly appear. And if he did, the entire Yuande mountain range would likely witness a battle that could shake the heavens. The tension surrounding the Yuande mountain range continued to grow as more powerful figures arrived. On the left side of the sky outside the mountain range, the air suddenly rippled as if disturbed by an invisible force. Moments later, 2 figures stepped out of the distorted space. One was a dignified middle-aged man, dressed in luxurious robes embroidered with lotus patterns. His aura was deep and steady, like a calm lake, yet beneath that calmness lay immense power. Beside him stood a graceful woman with refined features and elegant bearing. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, and the spiritual fluctuations surrounding her were equally formidable. Someone in the crowd immediately recognized them. That's Wu Xuan, the Manor Lord of the Lotus King Manor, and the woman beside him is his wife Lian Yun. The Lotus King Manor was one of the 8 kings' factions, holding immense authority within the domain. Wu Xuan himself was an extremely powerful cultivator who had dominated the region for many years. Their arrival caused another wave of commotion among the gathered experts. Yet before the discussions could settle, the space in another direction of the sky suddenly twisted again. A powerful fluctuation rippled through the heavens. From within the distorted space, an old man wearing a blue robe slowly stepped out. His appearance was calm, but the aura surrounding him carried a strange duality, sometimes gentle like flowing water, sometimes sharp like a blade of ice. The moment people saw him, many gasped in shock. It's actually the yin-yang ancestor from the ceremonial king palace. He disappeared nearly 100 years ago. I didn't expect the actions of Xuanling Hall to even draw out this old monster. The yin-yang ancestor was a legendary figure in the 8 kings' domain. For decades, rumors had circulated that he had already entered deep seclusion, or perhaps even passed away. Yet now he had suddenly appeared here. Someone whispered quietly, "I heard that thousands of years ago, the yin-yang ancestor was once saved by a former sect master of the Yuande sect. Could it be that he came today to help the Yuande sect?" The sky was filled with endless discussion. Everyone sensed that the situation was becoming more and more complicated. Meanwhile, at the center of the mountain range, the great elder of Xuanling Hall slowly lifted his head. His gaze landed directly on the yin-yang ancestor. A faint smile appeared on his wrinkled face. "Well, well, if it isn't the yin-yang ancestor of the ceremonial king palace. I heard you disappeared for 100 years, so you're still alive." His words carried a clear hint of mockery. However, the yin-yang ancestor merely looked at him with cold eyes. "What are you supposed to be?" His voice was calm, but his tone carried overwhelming contempt. "A mere 9th grade supreme who hasn't even reached the Earth Supreme realm. And you dare speak to me like that? In terms of seniority, you're not even worthy of being my grandson." The surrounding experts instantly sucked in cold breaths. The yin-yang ancestor's words were extremely blunt. The great elder's face darkened slightly, but the yin-yang ancestor had already continued speaking. "Release them." His gaze swept toward the massive spatial prison where the Yuande sect members were trapped. "Have your hallmaster apologize to the 8 kings' domain, and then return to wherever you came from." The words were simple, but the pressure behind them was immense. For a moment, the entire mountain range became silent. However, just as the yin-yang ancestor finished speaking, a light laugh suddenly echoed across the heavens and earth. The voice was calm, yet it carried an undeniable authority. Immediately afterward, ripples spread through the space above the spatial prison as if the heavens themselves had been disturbed. A figure slowly emerged from the distorted void. The moment people saw that person, the expressions of countless experts changed drastically, because the one who had appeared was none other than Ji He, the hall master of Xuanling Hall. His long robes fluttered gently as he stood in mid-air, his gaze sweeping across the gathered experts. Then he looked directly at the yin-yang ancestor. A faint smile appeared on his face. "Who is it that wants this lord to apologize?" His tone carried both arrogance and confidence. "Of course." He paused slightly. "It's this old man." Yet even after Ji He appeared, the yin-yang ancestor showed no intention of retreating. His expression remained calm and indifferent. Ji He narrowed his eyes slightly before suddenly letting out a cold sneer. "Oh." His gaze shifted behind the yin-yang ancestor. "Are you counting on the 2 behind you as well?" The moment those words were spoken, many people's expressions changed again, because it meant that there were still others hiding in the shadows. The yin-yang ancestor's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he gave a faint sigh, as expected. Compared to a true Earth Supreme, the gap is still enormous, to be seen through at a glance. Just as Ji He finished speaking, a soft sigh suddenly echoed from behind the yin-yang ancestor. The sound was calm, yet it carried an ancient weight that caused the surrounding space to tremble slightly. Moments later, The void behind the yin-yang ancestor began to twist violently. Layers of space folded over one another as if an invisible hand had torn open the fabric of the heavens. From within the distorted void, a crimson-robed man slowly stepped out. The man's presence was immediately overwhelming. His long red robes fluttered in the wind like dancing flames, and on his back he carried a massive blood-colored saber that radiated a terrifying killing aura. Even from a distance, many experts could feel the scorching heat emanating from his body. The moment people saw him, shocked voices erupted across the sky. "It's the Heavenly Fire Supreme, the Master of the Fire King Cave." The Fire King Cave was one of the 8 Kings factions, famous for its mastery of flame techniques and violent combat style. And the Heavenly Fire Supreme himself was a terrifying expert who had already stepped into the Earth's supreme realm many years ago. His arrival instantly changed the atmosphere of the battlefield. But the surprises had not yet ended. Soon after the crimson-robed man appeared, another ripple spread across the sky. A frail-looking old woman slowly walked out from the distorted space, leaning lightly on a wooden cane. Although her appearance seemed ordinary the moment she appeared, an invisible pressure spread across the heavens and earth. Many experts immediately recognized her. "That's the Holy Matriarch of Sacred King Mountain." Sacred King Mountain was another powerful faction within the 8 Kings domain. The Holy Matriarch herself was an ancient expert who had ruled the sect for countless years. Her cultivation had long ago reached an unfathomable level. The appearance of these two figures caused the entire crowd to erupt into shock. It seems the yin-yang ancestor truly came prepared. 3 kings have gathered here: the ceremonial King Palace, the Fire King Cave, and Sacred King Mountain. 3 major factions joining forces. Someone gasped. They're preparing to confront Xuanling Hall in a major battle. At this moment, the sky above the Yuande mountain range had become a gathering place for terrifying experts. Even the strongest figures of the 8 Kings domain had appeared one after another. The atmosphere had grown extremely tense. Meanwhile, the Holy Matriarch slowly raised her head and looked toward Ji He, the Hall Master of Xuanling Hall. Her voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of an elder, addressing someone younger. "Zhi He, why must you make things difficult for someone from a lower plane?" Her gaze was steady. "That young man merely defended himself. Is it truly necessary to go this far?" She paused slightly before continuing. "How about this? Give us some face and release everyone from the Yuande sect." Her eyes briefly swept toward the spatial prison. "As for the humiliation suffered by the 3 elders of Xuanling Hall at the hands of that lower plane expert, I am willing to compensate you. 1 million supreme spiritual liquid." The moment those words were spoken, many people in the crowd inhaled sharply. 1 million supreme spiritual liquid was an astronomical amount of cultivation resources. Even powerful sects would hesitate before offering such compensation. It was clear that the Holy Matriarch was sincerely attempting to resolve the conflict peacefully. However, Ji He's expression did not change in the slightest. Instead, a cold light appeared in his eyes. "Number." His voice was icy and decisive. "Anyone who offends Xuanling Hall must die." His words carried a terrifying, killing intent that spread across the sky. Then Ji He slowly narrowed his eyes as if he had already anticipated the current situation. A faint, mocking smile appeared on his lips. "Hall Master of the Heavenly King Hall, you may show yourself now." The moment his words fell, the expressions of countless experts changed. Because the Heavenly King Hall was the strongest faction in the 8 Kings domain. Its Hall Master Wang Tiangang was rumored to be an Earth Supreme expert whose strength rivaled the greatest figures of the region. Sure enough, a moment later, a powerful aura erupted from within the mountain range. On a towering mountain peak behind Ji He, a figure slowly appeared. He stood silently at the summit, overlooking the battlefield, like a ruler watching the world beneath his feet. It was Wang Tiangang, the Hall Master of the Heavenly King Hall, and with his appearance, the balance of power on this battlefield had just changed once again. The figure standing atop the distant mountain peak was none other than Wang Tiangang, the Hall Master of the Heavenly King Hall. The moment he appeared, the entire Yuande mountain range fell into a tense silence. Countless experts stared toward the mountain peak, their expressions filled with shock and uncertainty. Jihe actually called out the Heavenly King Hall Master. Someone whispered nervously, "Could it be that he has already sided with Xuanling Hall?" Another cultivator frowned deeply. The strength of Wang Tiangang is said to be no weaker than Ji He's. If those two join forces, his voice trailed off, but everyone understood what he meant. Under the gaze of thousands of experts, Wang Tiangang slowly lifted his head. His eyes were deep and unreadable as he looked toward the yin-yang ancestor, the heavenly fire supreme, and the holy matriarch. After a brief moment of silence, he finally spoke. Yin-yang. His voice carried across the heavens like distant thunder. This lord also has his difficulties. The moment those words spread across the battlefield, the entire crowd was stunned. For a moment, the vast mountain range fell completely silent, because everyone understood the meaning behind those words. The Heavenly King Hall had truly chosen to stand with Xuanling Hall. In other words, if the yin-yang ancestor and the others tried to intervene, Wang Tiangang himself would stop them. The faces of the gathered experts instantly changed. The situation had just taken a drastic turn. "You old dog of the Heavenly King Hall," the yin-yang ancestor suddenly exploded in anger. His voice thundered across the sky like a raging storm. "You shameless bastard! As the leader of the 8 Kings' domain, how can you do such a thing?" His eyes burned with fury. The Heavenly King Hall had always claimed to represent the dignity of the 8 Kings' domain. Yet now its leader had openly sided with an external force that had invaded their territory. It was nothing less than betrayal. However, Wang Tiangang remained silent. He simply stood atop the mountain peak, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, Jihe watched the entire scene unfold with a faint mocking smile. His gaze slowly shifted back toward the yin-yang ancestor and the others. "So," his voice was calm but carried a chilling arrogance, "do you still intend to oppose Xuanling Hall?" The words hung heavily in the air. The yin-yang ancestor, the heavenly fire supreme, and the holy matriarch all fell silent. Their expressions became extremely grave. They had never expected that the Heavenly King Hall would betray them at such a crucial moment. With Wang Tiangang standing on Xuanling Hall's side, the balance of power had completely collapsed. If they forced a confrontation now, they would likely face defeat. The hope of rescuing the Yuande sect had suddenly become incredibly slim. For a moment, the entire sky above the Yuande mountain range fell into an oppressive silence. Then suddenly, Jihe let out a soft laugh. "Haha." His eyes were filled with cold amusement. 3 days have already passed. It seems that Kid was too frightened to show himself. His tone was filled with ridicule. In his eyes, Xiao Yan had already fled in fear. Then Jihe slowly lowered his gaze toward the massive spatial prison beneath his feet. Thousands of Yuande sect members were still trapped inside. Their faces were pale with fear and despair. Jihe's voice echoed coldly across the sky. "Carry out the execution." The moment those words fell, the hearts of countless spectators sank. They knew what would happen next. The massacre was about to begin. But just as he was about to make his move, a terrifying aura suddenly descended from the heavens. It was an aura far beyond that of a 9th-grade supreme. The moment it appeared, the entire sky seemed to tremble. Within a 10,000-mile radius, space itself began to distort. Dark black flames spread silently across the void like an unstoppable tide eroding the surrounding space. The sudden change shocked everyone present. Even Jihe and Wang Tiangang narrowed their eyes instantly. Then, under the watchful gaze of thousands of experts, a massive section of space in the sky suddenly twisted violently. The void cracked open like shattered glass. From within the distorted space, a black-robed figure burst out violently. His speed was so terrifying that many experts could not even follow his movement. In a single instant, he crossed the vast sky and appeared above the battlefield. The terrifying pressure he carried caused countless cultivators to feel their hearts tremble. Then, a cold voice echoed across the heavens and earth. Release them within 10 breaths. The voice was calm, but it carried a killing intent that chilled the soul. After a brief pause, the voice continued. Otherwise, the black-robed figure slowly raised his head. His eyes burned like dark flames. Xuanling Hall will be destroyed. If you loved this story, please consider supporting us through the donation link below. Your support allows us to keep bringing you the best and most immersive video. We truly appreciate you being here with us.